The SATs actually have gone up each of the 2 past years. We've used Kaleidoscope. And the reason is that tests like these of creativity are not negatively correlated. With traditional tests, there's a small positive correlation. A third thing that happened that I found astonishing is remember on Rainbow, we got a decrease in ethnic group differences. In Kaleidoscope, we didn't get ethnic group differences disfavoring the usual underrepresented minority groups. And this surprised me. So we're not getting these ethnic group differences at all. So then I was worried, if we're not getting ethnic group differences, how will these kids do when they go to the university? And the answer is, after 1 year, we followed up on their academic performance. And the students who were admitted as a result of Kaleidoscope, who had what we call A's, they had very strong creative essays or wise essays or practical essays, did just as well as the students who were admitted for other reasons. So their academic performance was comparable, but unlike tests such as the SAT or traditional academic tests, they don't show the traditional ethnic group differences. So we're using Kaleidoscope again this year on an optional basis for our almost 16,000 applicants. And then the question is, well, once the kids get in, now you've got more creative kids getting in because you're assessing this. How do you teach them? So we started a center called the Center for the Enhancement of Learning and Teaching. And the center teaches teachers how to teach for creative as well as analytical, practical, and wise thinking. And that center has now been in existence 2 years, and we evaluated the seminar for teachers. It's a 1-semester seminar in different ways, but on a 5-point scale, the mean rating in year 1 was 4.8, and in year 2, there was one teacher who didn't like it. It was 4.7 out of 5. So the ratings have been really high, and teachers have said that when they started teaching in these different ways to kids who are more creative thinkers or more practical thinkers, it not only made it better for the kids, it made it better for them. And the reason it's better for them is it gave them a new excitement about what they're doing because it made their work more meaningful as teachers. So to conclude, I started off by saying that creativity is a decision that essentially anyone can make, that it's not just about, the Chaucers and the Picassos and the Victor Hugos, and it's about anybody. I then said it's largely an attitude of buying low and selling high in your life, of defying the crowd. I then talked about some of the other decisions involved, these attitudes like taking risks, overcoming obstacles, being willing to sell your ideas. Then I talked about how later in my career we have been applying these on a university-wide basis at Tufts University to try to make a difference to the way we admit students, to the way we teach students, and the way we assess students. And what I'd like to do is end with a story. It's not my story, it's a story by Isaac Asimov, and I'm going to just summarize it. It's called The End of Eternity. And in the story, in the distant future, there's a system of time travel, and people go back and forth through time, and they realize that there is a paradox. And the paradox is that everyone knows that the equations for time travel were formulated by a great mathematician in the 23rd century. But they also know that this great mathematician could not have formulated those ideas in the 23rd century because the math he would have needed wasn't yet available. So all the history books and all the records say he did this thing, but he couldn't have done it. You get the paradox. He did it, but he couldn't have done it. And they need to unravel the paradox because their existence depends on time travel. And if he didn't do it, they couldn't exist. But they did it, they do exist, so he must have done it, but he couldn't have. So they're worried that if the paradox unravels, they will all be snuffed out. And they realize that there's only one way this scientist, this mathematician, could have formulated the equations for time travel in the 23rd century. And that is, someone must have gone back in time from the distant future, like, say, the 80th century, and given him the math he would need to formulate these equations. So the people of the 80th century, or whatever it is, they send back a guy to teach the mathematician the math he'll need, so the mathematician can come up with the equations for time travel so that they can exist, to send the guy back in time so that he can have the mathematics. They're going to complete the circle. So they send this guy back, Cooper, and of course things start to go wrong. How many things go wrong? 3. Because everything is in threes. And anyone who doesn't see that is a fool. So the first thing that goes wrong is that he can't find the mathematician. No one, the guy's a hermit, and no one knows where he is or what he looks like. But finally, Cooper finds him. The second thing that goes wrong is that the mathematician turns out to be sort of a jerk. And when Cooper finds him, he almost shoots Cooper because he doesn't want him on his mountaintop. But Cooper, finally, having higher social skills than I had when I gave the IQ test to the girl in 7th grade, he finally convinces the mathematician to listen to him. Then the third thing goes wrong. And the third thing is that one day the mathematician is out walking on his mountain, he trips, he falls off, he hits his head, and he dies. And this is very bad, because all of the historical records say that in like 6 weeks he's going to discover these equations for time travel, but he won't do it, obviously, because he's dead. It's harder to do when you're dead. And that means that what's supposed to happen won't happen. Therefore, all people in the future whose existence depends on time travel will not exist. In other words, Cooper blew it because he misdefined the problem. He didn't see the problem as keeping the guy alive long enough to do this. So Cooper himself redefines the problem. He decides the only thing he can do is to come up with the equations himself. But he's no great mathematician. He's just, like us. But he does everything I talked about today. He redefines the problem. He believes in himself. He overcomes obstacles. He doesn't know that much. He's courageous. And he does everything I talked about. And just in the nick of time, he formulates the equations for time travel. So he goes down from the mountain, calls a press conference, presents the equations for time travel, and then he says he's the great mathematician. Because remember, no one knew what the guy looked like. So now it can go down in the history books that it was the great mathematician who did it, so everything is the way it's supposed to be, and all those future people will be able to exist. But Cooper feels depressed, and depression is a terrible thing. He's depressed because the whole thing's a fraud. He knows that he did it, not the great mathematician. And then he has one last thought I'll leave you with, and that is, he realizes there was no fraud. And the reason there was no fraud is it was always going to be he, Cooper, pretending to be the mathematician who formulated the equations for time travel. That guy was always going to die. From the standpoint of history, he, Cooper, was that mathematician. And the point of the story is, it's not necessarily, in this case, the great mathematician or the great artist or the great writer or whatever who does creative work. It's someone who decides for creativity. has the kinds of creative attitudes I'm talking about today, and then goes for it. It's something he did, it's something you can do, and it's something I hope you'll consider. Thank you for listening. Questions? Questions? Okay, we have time for some questions. Is there a microphone? Maybe this? Mine. We're redefining the problem. Okay.
You have to talk into this one here, Bob. Okay?
Okay.
So 1 second.
It's very hard to change microphones in midstream. Yes?
After you are working on the first intelligence from a cross-cultural perspective, you said that you are working in something that includes wisdom, intelligence, creativity, and synthesis.
Yes.
Are you getting close to a concept of wisdom from a cross-cultural perspective?
Yeah, I can tell you our definition, how we define wisdom. We view wisdom as using your intelligence, creativity, and knowledge in pursuit of a common good by balancing intrapersonal, your own, interpersonal, other people's, and extrapersonal, larger interests over the long and short terms through the infusion of positive ethical values. Some people say that that doesn't work cross-culturally because they're different values. But what we argue is that if you look at the great ethical systems or religions of the world, the values are largely the same. Sincerity, honesty, integrity, compassion, caring, the courage, that fundamentally different cultures do have similar values. That doesn't mean that they won't be corrupted by cynical leaders. But we believe that if you look at people who are wise, you would find that they're people who work for a common good using positive ethical values. People like Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King, or whoever. At the same time, we believe if you look at people who fail in their lives, especially leaders, what you'll find is that they're often smart, but they show certain things in common. And that is smart people who are fools, and smart people are particularly susceptible to being foolish because they think they're not. And what they show in common are the following: unrealistic optimism, I'm so smart, I'm so great, anything I do will work. Egocentrism, it's all about me. So if you look at companies like Enron or WorldCom or Tyco where they failed, often the CEO or the CFO, at first they lead for other people, then it just becomes about them. Unrealistic omniscience, they think they know everything, so they don't learn from their mistakes because they don't think they make them. Unrealistic omnipotence, they think they're all powerful. Unrealistic invulnerability, they think that nobody can get back at them, that they can do whatever they want. And, you know, it's what's happening right now in Zimbabwe with Mugabe, and it's happened in the United States, as far as I'm concerned, with Bush. And finally, ethical disengagement, where they think ethics are really important for other people, but not for them. So that's the conception of wisdom we use and the conception of foolishness. And we assess, usually by giving scenarios of problems where students confront ethical, moral, situational dilemmas, and we ask them to solve them. You're welcome.
Bob has agreed to take 3 questions.
Right.
Thanks, Professor Robert Sternberg. Just I need to ask you about the concepts like gifted and creative and intelligent. Do you think that the gifted children must to be created Do you think he is creative at the same time?
No.
And also, the other question is,
Yeah.
do you think that the creative child must be get a high score in IQ?
Okay. I think there are different kinds of giftedness. I've talked about creative, analytical, practical, wisdom-based. But in the end, I think gifted people are people who find something they do really well and they make the most of it. And it may be just one thing or two things or three things, but they leverage their strengths at the same time that they compensate for or correct for weaknesses. So if you look at people who are really successful, they've found something that they do really well, and they make the most of it, and whatever they don't do well, they find ways around that. Do I think a creative person has to have a high IQ? No. Creativity, in my view, as I said today, is largely a matter of an attitude toward life. But that said, if part of this creative attitude, remember I talked about you have to be able to analyze whether your idea is a good idea, and that's the IQ part. So creativity, broadly speaking, has an analytical component, and if you have a very low IQ, it'll be hard to do that analysis, to ask whether the ideas are any good. One of the frustrating things for me now in my own country is there are people with ideas that are really quite original, they're just not good. You know, like new ways of torturing people, new ways of incarcerating people, but they're neither analytically strong nor wise. So I don't think you need a high IQ, but if your IQ were very low, it would be hard to be creative.
Okay, we have one more question to keep with our trilogy of questions.
Hi. Do you think that the feeling to be different might be positively associated with creativity independently of IQ?
Unfortunately, I missed one word, the feeling to be...
Perception to feel that you are different from others. Like a feeling of singularity, individualism, might play an important role in creativity independently of IQ.
I think it's not necessarily associated with IQ. Someone might feel different because they have a high IQ, and other people look at them as kind of a nerd or as weird, but it is intrinsic, I think, to creativity. It's not intrinsic to high IQ, it is intrinsic to creativity, because creativity is about if everyone's walking this way, you're walking that way. To me, you know, we have it's a good place to end. One of the problems with schooling, at least in the United States, is we put a lot of emphasis on the smartness, the IQ. And what ends up happening is we get a lot of people who, you know, they make a lot of money, they become good investment bankers or lawyers. It's the same thing that the Terman study found and the Subotnick study found. They are successful, but they're not necessarily strikingly original thinkers. If we want to have you know, the world is going to crap. I mean, you know, like if you look at the way things are going, there are a tremendous number of problems in terms of human rights, poverty, disease. We need people who are not only high IQ, we need people who are creative, to think of new ways of approaching these very difficult problems. But really, most importantly, we need people who are wise, who will realize that these are the important problems in the first place, and not, say, spending untold billions of dollars fighting a war that's going nowhere. I mean, the biggest problem is the lack of wisdom, and so we need all of these components, really, in the world today. I guess that because that's 3 questions, even if I could answer another one, I wouldn't. So thank you very much.
Don't go anywhere. I'd like to our thanks to Bob Sternberg for coming on over to talk to us about the topic of making creative decisions and the decision to be creative. And we have for Bob a little plaque as a souvenir of this trip to say thanks.
Thank you.
Okay? Now, I'd like to call down just for a word before the cocktail starts, which will be the introduction to the cocktail by Noël Vidbon, who is part of the directing team of our Institute of Psychology. She's the adjunct director of our institute. And so it's our pleasure that she can come and say a few words to open, to close our first day and to open the cocktail event, which will be occurring in a few minutes at the main level. Before she says a few words, because when she's done, I know you'll all be ready to go enjoy the cocktail. I want to tell you that tomorrow morning, Joe Randulli from the University of Connecticut, who is a world specialist on giftedness, will be talking starting at 8:30 in the morning. And I'd like just to remind you that 8:30 in the morning is 10 minutes before 8:40 in the morning, as some people tend to forget in the early morning. So we'll be starting right on time, 8:30 in the morning, and we'll be looking forward to all of you tomorrow morning. And here is Noël Vidbon, and thanks a lot, Noël, for addressing us.
Merci Claude. Ce ne sera pas très long, pas plus long, oui. Parce que j'ai hérité de vous, donc je ferai mon speech d'abord en
Long time ago, we have a conversation on email when I had a grade student.
Have the translator, you say, and then he translates?
No,
Or you say both? You say both? Okay, so, because, well, if you say it in English, it translates into French.
Okay.
If you want. Okay.
So let's go.
Because there's translation
So
going
I
on.
do it in French, excuse me, in English. So, on the behalf of Professor Franois Marte, Director of the Psychology Institute of the Paris Descartes University, I'm very happy to welcome you here tonight for the conference Excellence in Education 2008 Future Minds and Creativity. As you know, this event is the opportunity for a unique gathering of researchers and experts from so many countries around the world. I won't try at this stage to get into the details of the contributions that will be made during these 4 days of intense creativity. This will be the task of the organizers to draw the relevant conclusions for a very rich and promising conference outcome, without any doubt. As the representative of the Psychology Institute, I'd like to highlight the necessity and the importance of this particular conference on a general level of research and on a more specific one. We know that education, as well as economics, has become a stake in today's world, which cannot be answered by usual solutions. Concerning gifted children or gifted people, we necessarily have to use innovative solutions to allow them to achieve their potential. We know that usual educational models do not operate well with such children or people. So there is a major relevance to develop methods, models, structures, which could constitute efficient supports for their development. Nothing new in there. But in the context of global mutation of economies and societies, it's clear too that the whole educational models and structures need a deep renewal inside the different countries as well as on a worldwide level. Organization of work changes, technologies change, job nature changes, ways of living change. Moreover, ways of thinking and values change on a different pace and with different modalities, provoking increased strains and resistance to change into societies. It's precisely for such reasons that development of thought, active learning and new learning models, nurturing and enrichment of creativity, new learning technologies, to cite only some central topics of this conference, have to be given a main role in designing our future society's everyday life. That's a great part of your task. As for the more specific importance of this conference, it relies on the richness and the interest of the works that our researchers are currently undertaking within the international networks. We know that the international dimension of research activity is a determining factor for the justification and recognition of psychology in the context of transformation of the French university system we're engaged in. I mentioned not long ago thought development, new training models, creativity enrichment. That is what can support our discipline to show its real social impact and its ability to give answers to our contemporary societies. It has to be applied to professional training and to knowledge development as well. We'll need that in order to claim our position, of course, in the field of professional expertise with regards to a social demand. For instance, how to promote educational frameworks more adapted for gifted children, but also to defend the position of psychology as a science of mind as well as a thought training, because this position seems wrongfully disputed and largely ignored today. As a social psychologist, I add there is a political question in there, a question of power relations behind all those local or worldwide phenomena. We have to keep that in mind to be able to act also at this level when necessary. And it often happens to be necessary. For the moment, enough with the issues and challenges we have to face and give answers to. I will now finish up and leave you for pleasant meetups and exchanges that you will be able to develop during these next days, thanks to our nice organizers and colleagues. First, Charlie, Maria, Xavier, and many others you'll meet. Once again, let's thank them for their creativity in the way they were able to bring us new problems concerning the material organization of the conference. Thanks for their talent to find out solutions in a good mood. Let's have fun together now.
Okay, thanks to Noel, Livon, and you can all go upstairs for the cocktail. Okay. Thanks, Noel. Yeah, we've led you to rediscover a new panneau d'affichage system. It'll be better for a picture. Yeah. Panneau d'affichage system.
I got from my home, from a colleague, Singapore, you'll be coming.